videos and much more on the content which are related to the automobile components and automobile uh, uh, vehicles and all. So today on the third unit, they are going to present all the required information and as per your syllabus, which Borkar sir has presented. So I will hand over to Mr. Purvang Mantri to take the charge.
Thank you,
Uh,
Harshal.
Thank you, sir, also. On behalf of Sanjeevani Engineering College and on behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering, I warmly welcome one small request to all the audience. Today I am having the admission duty, so there may be some background noise at my side. I couldn't keep my speaker open for much of the time. So I warmly once again welcome respected Mantri sir and request to start the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Harshal, for this warm welcome. I will now share my screen and begin with the presentation. I hope I'm audible, and please let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, Purvang, you are audible.
Yeah. So yeah, as Harshal said, my name is Purvang Mantri, and I have completed my bachelor's and my diploma in automobile engineering from Parul University, Gujarat, Vadodara. And after that, I was a lecturer with the same college, and I used to teach vehicle dynamics and automotive certification and homologation and subjects like automobile engineering to the students of mechanical engineering. And so during my job as a lecturer, I also used to mentor the students of automobile engineering and mechanical engineering with competitions like Baha, Supra, FE Cycle, Go Kart, and they actually participated in those competitions, and they have brought a good result for our college, the Parul University of Vadodara. After then, I pursued postgraduate diploma in electric mobility with Harshal, and currently, like during this postgraduate diploma, I was an intern at Altair, and now currently I'm working as a YouTuber, and I'm making videos related with automobile engineering and bike reviews. So without wasting much time, I would like to start a session on automotive control systems. So in today's session, we are going to talk about what control systems are, what kind of control systems are present around us, and how can we relate with them, and what are control system made of, why are control system necessary, what components are comprised in them, which makes them a control system, and we will also see what different, like we will go briefly deep into the parts of the control system, and we will see a little small simulation on how you can develop a control system for your future projects. So let's talk about what a control system is. A control system is just a system which provides desired response by controlling the output. Like in simple terms, I would like to say a fan, the ceiling fan that we have at our homes or in our college or in any room to provide us with air breeze when we are feeling warm. That is actually a control system. So like in that system, in the system of a fan, we have the input, which is the switch. So we turn on the switch when we are feeling warm, and we turn on the switch. As soon as we turn on the switch, the fan starts rotating. So that's the rotation of the fan is the output. So the system in between is known as the control system. The system, like from switch, like it goes into the regulator, then from the regulator it goes into the the motor. So that entire system from regulator to motor is a control system. Now, this is an open loop control system. This diagram denotes an open loop control system. Secondly, if there is other type of control system too, which is a closed loop control system. Let me just bring my pen over here. In closed loop control system, we actually take the output and we compare it with the input. And the reason for comparing this is to find if there is any error in the output. And if there is any error, then we correct the input according to that error, and we get the desired output out of it. So a simple example of a closed loop control system is our air conditioning system. So ACs have this temperature sensors within them. So if like we start our AC and we set the AC temperature to be 22 degrees Celsius, and it cools the room it cools the air inside the room till 22 degrees Celsius, and it stops the cooling. Like the fan will still keep on rotating, but the refrigerant inside the AC will not be present in the inside the in room unit. So it will try and maintain the temperature of the air inside the room to 22 degrees Celsius. And once the air temperature starts, the temperature of the air starts increasing, the sensor will notice it and it will notify it to the control unit. And that control unit will then again start the again allow the refrigerant to enter the in room unit, and thus it will again start cooling the air. So that is one example of feedback of this closed loop type control system. Even our body is a control system, to be honest. So we have got 5 senses, which we will talk ahead. I would like you guys to I would like to make this session relatable with our body itself, because our body is actually a control system. And also I would like you guys to be interactive in this session. So if you have any doubts in between, you can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask right away. Don't let the questions pile up till the end of the end of this session. It is better if you ask it directly at that particular moment. So to relate with your mechanical systems, we do have control systems in mechanical engineering and automobile engineering too. So firstly, the first image is actually our speed governors. You might have learned this way deeply than compared to me. I have just learned the concept of governors. You guys would have went into the mathematics of the governors. So these governors are actually they control the speed of any mechanism. So for example, our transportation buses, they actually have speed lock in them, and that speed lock is actually governed by a governor. So this as you know the working of this governor, these are the flyweights, and when the governor is rotating because of the centrifugal force, these flyweights fly outside, and at some point they are at a limit from and at that particular limit they disengage the power transmission. And that's like this is a brief working of governor. And with this system, it actually controls the speed of any rotating part or any of the vehicle. Secondly, we have this steering mechanism. This is a regular mechanical type steering mechanism of our vehicles. So this is an actual control system in case like we are the input for the vehicles, and the output in this situation is the direction of the vehicle. So if you want to go left, you turn the steering wheel to the left. That is our input. And these all parts, the steering column, universal joint, rack and pinion housing, the tie rods, the knuckle joint, these are the parts of the control system, and the resulting output is the direction of the vehicle. And I would say this is actually this might look like an open loop control system, but I would say this is a closed loop control system, because in this the feedback is the vibrations that we are getting on the steering wheel. Now the current generation steering mechanism, which is the powered steering mechanism, which actually has electro-hydraulic systems, they don't provide much feedback, but the steering mechanisms of the older car, like from the era of 2000s to 2005, when the steering mechanism was totally mechanical, they did a good job in providing the feedback with the help of vibrations. So from those vibrations, we would understand that a vehicle is turning in the desired direction or not, and we would correct the steering input as necessary. So this technically is a closed loop control system. It might look open loop control system, but this one is a closed loop control system. Similarly, we have the braking system. Now, this is a hydraulic braking system of our vehicles. Even our current bikes, which have disc brakes, they are also hydraulic braking system. So even this is a control system. In this system, the input is our brake pedal, the foot, which we press with our foot, and the control system, the parts of the control system are the master cylinder, the brake lines, the calipers, the wheel cylinders of the rear wheels, the brake pads. These are all the parts of the control system, and the output is the reduction of the speed in our vehicle. So even this is an example of closed loop control system, because we get the feedback of braking the vehicle. If we are on highway and we press the brake pedal because of certain situation ahead of us, So we press the brake pedal, and if it is not it is not slowing down as desired, so we press the brake pedal even harder. So that the feeling of not braking harder, like the feeling of not slowing down quickly, is actually a feedback in this system. So that's why this is also a closed loop type control system. Now, moving ahead, let's these are some form of electronic control systems in our vehicles. We will go deep into this in tomorrow's session. I will just give a brief idea about what these systems are. These are just the diagrams. So the first figure over here on the left is actually a diagram for anti-lock braking system, electronic brake distribution, and electronic stability control. So the three major technologies which are being implemented as standard in today's car, the ABS, EBD, and ESC, they are actually controlled by the same control unit, the same control system. And this is just a simple diagram of a hydraulic brake system which has certain valves on each brake line, and these valves actually help into controlling the brake pressure and then thus controls the braking force on each wheel. And that's how ABS, EBD, and ESC works. We will go deep into this in tomorrow's session. And secondly, we have the this ride by wire thing, the electronic throttle or ride by wire or throttle by wire. These kind of, like, this system was first introduced in Maruti Suzuki Swift, the first model. But back then, we also today we might have some cars with mechanical cables running from throttle body to the accelerator pedal. But Swift was the first Indian manufactured car who actually implemented the ride by wire or throttle by wire technology, in which the throttle pedal would give the electronic signal to the vehicle's ECM, which is electronic control module, or we can call it ECU, electronic control unit. And that ECU will control the position of the throttle, the butterfly valve which is inside the throttle body. It is the same sort of butterfly valve which we see in the carburetors of our bikes. So, and also this is actually a closed loop control system, because we take the feedback of the throttle valve, that if you are pressing if the position of throttle pedal is at certain point, then the valve should open at certain angle itself. But if it is not opening at a certain angle, then it needs to be corrected, and that sense of not opening at the correct angle of the angle of the throttle valve is sensed by the TPS sensor, which is throttle position sensor, and it sends the signal back to the ECM, and it corrects the input accordingly, and thus the result is the desired output, the desired angle of the throttle position. So this image is also same for the throttle by wire. Now let's see what are the components of a control system. So each control system comprises of three main parts. Firstly are the sensors, then the microcontrollers, and the actuators. So sensors, to understand sensors, I would like to take the example of our senses, the five senses of human beings: the touch, smell, sight, taste, and hearing. So touching, like touch, the skin, from skin we can actually feel the flow of air over our body, or the feeling of holding something. So our skin can be a proper example for a proximity sensor. So like the proximity sensor, in case like our phone screen is actually is a type of proximity sensor. I might be wrong over here, but it certainly it certainly senses our skin, and it acts accordingly how we are touching it. Similar to the feel which we have on our skin. We feel something, if any insect is crawling on our skin, then we will feel it, and we will just act accordingly. Then our eyesight is actually a pure example for our camera. Even cameras have the sensor, or like the CMOS sensor or APS-C sensor, which actually takes the light, which actually it allows the light to come and reflect, get transmitted on the sensor, and the sensor senses that data, and it converts it into electrical forms. Similarly, our eyes actually take the light, our eyes allow the light to fall inside the retina of our eye, and our retina converts the signals into readable signals which our brain can process. Then our ears, which hear the sound or any song, our ears are actually a perfect example for this. ultrasonic sensor, or let's say microphone, which we are currently talking on. So with ears we listen, and we process things accordingly. Similarly, microphone picks up the audio signals and it processes accordingly, and that's why because of this microphone, we are connected today from the like connected today remotely. Then the speaker, like my mouth, or the vocals of our human beings. So we are speaking, so we are producing the audio signals. And similarly, our computers have speakers, our music systems have speakers that actually produces the audio signals, because of which we can pursue music, or the birds chirping, or the different things. And lastly, we have the taste. Now, I don't think so there is any sensor yet to pursue taste for our electronic systems, but I really hope there will be something in future. So as the sensors, the inspiration for our sensors was our human body itself. So, like, inspiration for the entire control system was our human body. So, like, now moving ahead, these were all the sensors. Now let's talk about microcontrollers. So microcontrollers are actually the brain of electronic control systems. Just like our brain, even our brains have neurons within them, and neurons are fired by small electrical pulses. So like, pay attention to these words: small electrical pulses. The microcontrollers in our electronic control system, which are showcased here, also work on small electrical pulses. They only pursue analog or digital data. Analog data is voltage, the variation in voltage, and digital data is just zeros and ones, the bytes. Similarly, our neurons are fired accordingly. If you if you ever got the chance to experience the imaging center, if someone has been there, so they have this big dome type machine over there, in which they allow the human body to, like, a human being to lie, and they let that body to slide in, and it actually transmits electromagnetic waves, so that it can picture, like, it can capture the images of our brain in different conditions. So that is because electricity always works like, it works hand in hand with magnetism. I hope you are understanding my this. So this is a simple AC voltage. So if you have learned about electrical and magnetism, then you might have understood that electricity and magnetism flow in perpendicular direction of each other. So this is the perpendicular plane, the 90-degree plane. Let me just correct this one. Yeah, now this is a perpendicular plane. Like the book, if you open the book like, we open the book in two parts. The left part is in vertical plane, and the bottom part is in the horizontal plane. So that's how electrical and magnetic fields actually coincide with each other. And with this concept, we actually get the images of our brain, because there are electrical signals flowing inside our brains, and because of which we get the images of the brain. And similarly, microcontrollers or microprocessors work on the concept of electrical pulses, and based on those pulses, it makes the decision, and it allows the actuators to function accordingly. Now, there is a difference between microprocessor and a microcontroller. So where's my mouse? So this bigger chip we see on each board is actually a microprocessor, but the entire board, when these microprocessors are connected with the peripherals, like the memory, or different resistors, or let's say transistors, and other components, they actually end up becoming this microcontroller, because a microprocessor cannot function on its alone. It needs to have memory and other peripherals connected with it, and that's how it becomes a microcontroller. And after that, it is allowed to function as desired. Lastly, we have the actuators. Now, to understand actuators, I would like to take an example of our muscles. So let's say we are in gym, we want to build our body, we want to build our muscles. So muscles are our actuators, and the sensors too, here in our case. But in control system, the muscles and the sensors are different things. So in our case, let's say we are doing bicep curls. We are focusing on our biceps. So we have the weight in our hand, in our wrist, and we want to lift it. So our muscles actually senses the weight, and it signals the brain that it needs force to like to lift it up. So brain also again signals those required muscles, the bicep muscles, to contract and allow the weight to be lifted. So that this is one like great example of closed loop control system, where the muscle senses the weight and the brain triggers the muscles in such a way that it contracts and lifts the weight so that we can build our muscles. Similarly, actuators are triggered by electrical signals which have been given by the microcontroller, and it works till the desired output is attained. And to make this up till now this is just an open loop control system. But once we add another sensor on the output of the output of the actuator to sense if that actuator is at that particular position or not, at that moment it becomes the closed loop system. We will understand this in further today. So let's go deeper into the types of sensors. So the first sensor I would like to take over here is the potentiometer. So to understand potentiometer, the simplest component we have in a house is the fan regulator. So our current fan regulator would be a stepper type potentiometer. It has, let's say, 4 to 5 steps. So technically 4 to 5 speeds of the fan. So the potentiometer is not in steps, but instead it is just it freely rotates over an axis. So there are two types of potentiometer. One is the rotating type potentiometer, and other is the linear type potentiometer. The one here showcased here is a rotating type potentiometer. So it has a resistor inside it, a resistive track, and there are 3 pins to a potentiometer. One is the positive, which like the input. The other is ground, and last is the signal. Yeah. So the connections with like the battery connections or the microcontroller connections are given on the 1 and 3 points, the first and the last point, and the middle point actually gives us signals. So as the wiper is rotated, which is this knob, as we rotate this knob, the wiper inside this potentiometer rotates over a resistive track, and based on its angle, the resistance of the resistance inside the circuit changes. So at this particular angle, the resistance is something ohms. But if the angle is increased, the resistance will increase. So let's say increase by delta x or delta theta, let's say. And similarly, at the end, it produces the maximum resistance, so the signal will be 0. At the very beginning, the resistance is the most minimal, so the signal is exactly the same as the input voltage. Here, the signal is voltage, to be honest. Okay. So at this position, the output will be equal to the input. But at this position, the output will be 0. So this potentiometer are used in what in the previous slide when we were discussing about throttle by wire or ride by wire. So the potentiometers are used in sensing the position of pedals or certain things. So in throttle position, like in the throttle by wire case, the position of the throttle pedal is sensed by potentiometer. The data is been sent to the microcontroller, and then microcontroller triggers the servo motor of the throttle body, which opens the throttle valve. And based on that, the throttle valve gets opened, and that's how the throttle by wire works. This potentiometer is also used in fuel gauges, our current electronic fuel gauges. So this second figure is actually an example of fuel gauge. So this is the float inside the fuel tank, and this is the potentiometer. These two strips are actually the resistive track, and as soon as this float is lifted up, this is the wiper. This wiper slides across this resistive track, and based on this data, the microcontroller understands the fuel level, and thus it showcases the fuel level in the driver's cockpit. Now, in electric vehicles, we do use potentiometers for throttle. And based on this data, it is the throttle, to make it simple, the throttle of electric vehicle is same as a fan. So as we rotate this regulator of a fan, the speed of the fan changes. Similarly, as we provide throttle input to our accelerator pedal, the speed of the electric motor inside in our electric vehicle is going to change. But it is a little bit more complicated than this. But to understand the concept, I'm making this simple. Now, next we have the Hall effect sensor. So Hall effect is Hall effect sensor actually senses the magnetic fields around it. So this is a actually in a Hall effect sensor we use p-type semiconductor. So like positive type semiconductor. So whenever any magnet comes across this type of semiconductor, it actually deflects the current flowing through it, and based on this deflection, like the output of the current will be disturbed, and simultaneously this output can be measured, and based on this deflection in output we can get the idea of what is the power of that magnetic field around it. So this type of Hall effect sensor is currently being used in sensing the position. So in our vehicles, we use Hall effect sensor in camshaft positioning for sensing the camshaft position, for sensing crankshaft position, then also for sensing wheel speed in ABS, for ABS. And in case of electric vehicles, we use Hall effect sensor to sense the speed of electric motors, so that we can correct the speed of electric motor based on what the throttle input is provided by the driver. Next, we have the wave propagation sensors. Now, these kind of sensors are helpful in case of like these are the types of parking sensors, I would say. For current scenario, these are the types of parking sensors, but for future, these sensors are way too important for autonomous vehicle, or let's say driverless vehicle. Now, wave propagation sensors are something which sends the wave to sense the distance for between that particular point where the sensor is located till the point ahead of it where another object is present. So these are positionings, these are sensors to measure the dimension around it. So based on which based on the data of these sensors, the vehicle speed can be controlled and brake can be applied. If there is if you have heard about this technology of auto braking system, this was first introduced by Volvo. So it is the safest system up till now. This system was also implemented by Mercedes and BMW, but they weren't as safe as Volvo's system. So this wave propagation sensor actually sends waves ahead of it, around it, like how it is placed on the car. So it sends the waves, and that wave, if there is any object present if there is any object obstructing the field of wave, the waves will get reflected, and it will go back and travel back to the sensor. And based on the time taken by the waves to travel from the sensor and back to the sensor, the distance is being calculated. Now, currently we use these sensors for reverse parking sensing. So if you want to sense what is behind a vehicle, because we can't judge the distance while being in the driver's seat, so we need to have certain sensors around the vehicle to sense the distance of the objects which are around the vehicle. Simultaneously, we have the cameras now. So and in future, like Tesla uses this sensor for its autopilot system, and in future we will be using this sensor for autonomous vehicles or driverless vehicles too. Now, image sensor. Now, image sensor, I have taken a big word for this. This is actually a camera. So the working of this, like the main motive of this sensor is to see what is in front of it, like to see which is being the light which is reflected from the object, and it is striking inside the sensor of the camera. This is the actual, like it is the only purpose of this sensor. And there are two types, like there were various types of sensor, but currently we use CMOS sensor, which are actually based on MOSFET amplifiers. Now this might be some big words, because MOSFET is an electronic this component, which is a type of transistor. It is an electronic switch, I would like to say. And based on like this sensor, the image sensor or camera actually takes the light input and converts it into electrical input, which is easily readable by the microcontroller. And we did perform small experiments during a postgraduate diploma with such not with such sensors, but with images. So we used to code in Python, and we converted the images into black and whites, and we tried and converted the blacks into more black color into more black, and white into more white. And based on this, we were able to judge the distance from where the camera was located until the object which was being shot by the camera. So image sensors are actually used for that purpose. Like wave propagation sensor is also for measuring the distance, but image sensors are used for understanding the objects. Like for example, in future vehicles, which is autonomous vehicles or driverless vehicles, we need to identify the object which is in front of the car. Like for example, there is a pedestrian walking on the road, and hello.
Please continue, sir.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So, for example, if any pedestrian is walking on the road, so the image sensor will actually sense the pedestrian, and it has been taught, the microcontroller has been taught that if the object has certain features, then it will learn that it will match those features with the example that was provided to it, and based on that, it will understand that that is a particular person. It is a pedestrian that is walking on the road, and based on that, it will press the brakes so that it doesn't let the vehicle to go and just drive over the pedestrian. Similarly, you can perform the experiment of identifying cats and dogs. This is the most basic example for image sensing, and you can go further ahead in this field too. Now, moving ahead, we have the LiDAR. Now,
sir, I have a small question.
Yes, sir.
Wave propagation sensor and image sensors, if we want to implement it on our vehicle, so can we know its cost in India? Because we are trying to go for the innovation in our proposed vehicle also.
Yeah.
So if we want to go for some kind of innovation or something new feature in the vehicle, then we are interested in knowing the cost, because an Indian cost, so that we can purchase it. That is my small attempt.
Okay. So for small scale project, like for engineering projects, like say mini project or major project, you can acquire these sensors for a couple of $1,000. Wave propagation sensors, like there are in types of wave propagation sensors, there are light sensors like LiDAR, radars, and ultrasonic sensors, and they are easily available on Amazon and in your local market too. For like if you are making projects based on Arduino or Raspberry Pi, but if you want to go in like actual automotive segment, where like based on what the standards are available, what standards have been decided by AUTOSAR and the certification bodies, so the cost accordingly increases because the sensors have to be made accordingly. There are standards for microcontrollers too, which I'm going to discuss in future discuss ahead in this session itself.
Okay.
So accordingly, the cost of the sensors and the microcontroller increases. Okay. Still, they are easily acquirable. They are not highly expensive. They are around 2,000 or 5,000 rupees.
Okay.
But they need to be ordered specially from specific websites. But the sensors which can be easily connected with Arduinos and Raspberry Pi are easily available on Amazon and in your local market too.
Okay.
So let's talk about LiDAR. This LiDAR, the full form for LiDAR is light detection and ranging. So just like wave propagation sensor, which I said earlier, the LiDAR actually sends light signals, the laser beam, and that laser beam bounces off the object and it returns back. So in this, this is a sensor image. So the one part is just sending the light, the laser beam, and other part is just sensing the laser coming back, reflecting back. So that in this we calculated distance by the time it required for the laser beam to reflect back. So distance in this sensor is easily calculated by d is equal to ct upon 2. C is the speed of the light, t is the time taken by that light to go and come back, reflect back, and it is divided by 2 because it takes t amount of time to go and come back. So the distance is just one way, so we divide the time by 2. Now we implement multiple sensors, multiple wave propagation sensors to get the data. Like we cannot rely on just one type of sensor. We can't just keep camera to find the distance or just LiDAR to find the distance, but we need to have multiple sensors. This is called sensor fusion. So we have ultrasonic, LiDAR, and camera together implemented across the vehicle, which sends the data and microcontroller actually collects all that data, and based on that data, it calculates the distance of the object in front of it or around it. Next is the radar. Radar is another type of wave propagation sensor. We might have heard about radars in ships, the naval ships and submarines. We also have radars on vehicles too. So it sends radio signals, and just like the LiDAR or just like any other wave propagation sensor, it sends radio signals, and that radio signals are reflected from the object, and based on that, it calculates the time, and based on the time, it calculates the distance. Now, then we have temperature sensor. So, as the name says, temperature sensor, the working of temperature sensor is to sense the temperature of any fluid. So, currently, we have temperature sensors in our engines too. We measure the temperature of the engine coolant. We don't directly sense the temperature of engine. We sense the temperature of engine coolant, and based on that temperature, the thermostat valves actuate if it is electronically actuated. But current thermostat valves are actually mechanically actuated. So our air conditioning system has temperature sensor in it. We need to have temperature sensor for battery cooling too. So we can't allow in electric vehicle, we can't allow battery to function in higher working temperature or lower working temperature. There the working temperature for batteries between 30 to 40 degrees Celsius. If I'm not wrong, I would like Harshal to correct me. So
yes, bro, you're right.
Yeah,
I had already covered this part in thermal management system. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. So in temperature sensor, we have three types of temperature sensors. One is thermistor, other is RTD, which is resistant temperature detectors, and lastly we have thermocouples. So majorly we use thermistors in many cases. So there are two types of thermistors: the NTC thermistor and the PTC thermistors. NTC here is negative thermal coefficient, and PTC is the positive thermal coefficient. So in NTC, we say that, like, the concept of NTC is that the resistance of the sensor will increase when the temperature is decreased, or vice versa. If temperature increases, the resistance decreases. But in positive type thermal conductivity, both the resistance and the temperature, like the resistance will increase if the temperature is increasing, and it will decrease if the temperature is decreasing. So based on this resistance, like the way how we used to control the potentiometer earlier, we were varying the resistance to vary the output voltage. Similarly, in this type of sensor, the resistance is varied by the change in the temperature. So that change is understood by the microcontroller through the variance in resistance, and that's how temperature sensor works. Then we have humidity sensor. Now, in our HVAC system, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system of our vehicles, or our air conditioning system of our house or any infrastructure, we have humidity sensor within them, because the main fundamental of air conditioning system is to dehumidify the air, because humidity is not desirable for humans. You guys would be aware about it. If someone is from Mumbai or coastal region, they are affected highly by humidity, and even though the temperature is not that high, but the humidity will make them uncomfortable to be outside in the nature. So that's why we need to have humidity sensor to control the climate in vehicle or in any room. So this kind of sensor actually senses the humidity, which is small water vapor present within the air. Now there are two types of humidity sensor: the capacitive type humidity sensor and the resistive type humidity sensor. Now in capacitive type humidity sensor, there are two electrodes which monitors the capacitance of the thin metal strip which is placed between them. Now, as the humidity increases or decreases, the capacitance of that metal increases or decreases. So based on this change in humidity and the change in capacitance, the capacitive type humidity sensor produces that kind of voltage signals, which microcontroller learns and makes decision accordingly. Then nextly we have the resistive type humidity sensor, which uses small polymer comb, and that comb is affected by the humidity. So if the humidity increases, the resistance of that polymer comb will increase, and if it decreases, it will change accordingly. Now let's talk about some microcontrollers, the brains of the control systems, and how they actually take the data of the sensor and they produce signals. So firstly, we have the most what we say famous example. This is the Atmega 328 microcontroller, which is used in Arduino Uno. I suppose we are all aware about Arduino, and so this is the best microcontroller, I would say, to make any project. I mean, there are better options than this, but to learn about control system, I would suggest you to go with to start with Arduino Uno. So this microcontroller was manufactured by Atmel, and it works on voltage of 1.8 to 5.5 volts. Its clock speed or operating speed is or operating frequency is 20 megahertz, and it has total 23 input-output pins. So these pins, which are on the side of the microcontroller board, are actually input-output pins. Then we have the flash memory. Flash memory is kind of a RAM, or like, let's say, hard disk, in which we actually load our code, the code which we have written, and that's how we program the Arduino. The SRAM and the ERAM are the basic memory, which consists of certain libraries. So they are for 32 KB, 2 KB, and 1 KB respectively. Now, if we look here, these are some main IO pins, input-output pins, in which we either give the input of 5 volts or 3.3 volts, or VIN, which is almost we can maximum we can provide up to 5.5 volts. Secondly, this is the data transferring port. We can call it the USB port, and this is the powering port with 12. This our regular phone charger. We can power this with power it through this port, but the pin is circular type. The circular type pin. They are available. They provide us with I guess they provide it with Arduino. You need to purchase them separately. So the first 6 pins over here, the bottom ones, they are actually the analog pin. So they take the data of voltage. They take the voltage signals of the sensors. Just like in any sensor, you will get the signals in the form of voltage output. So the voltage will vary from the input voltage and to the maximum voltage which is provided to the sensor. The pins on the opposite side are actually the digital sensors. So these sensors actually produce signals like 0 and 1. So sorry for my drawing. I'm drawing with my mouse. So this is a 0 signal and this is a 1 signal. Technically, even these are the voltage signals itself, but they are in pulses. So if you are aware about electrical, then we have 2 types of voltages. One is the DC voltage and the other is the AC voltage. Okay, so here the analog pins actually take the DC voltage, and these kind of pins are they provide the discrete voltage, which are in pulses, zeros and ones. Even these are like the highest one is actually on 5.5 volts or whatever you have set the limit to, and the lowest, the 0 byte, is actually 0 volts. So that's how electronics also, like electronics works on electricity itself. And based on this data, you can program the Arduino for controlling servo motor or DC motor. I will show you how you can do it without purchasing any Arduino or any other component. We have that session coming forward today itself. The next microcontroller we have is the Broadcom BCM2711. Now this is another famous microcontroller which is used in Raspberry Pi. Now Raspberry Pi, I would say it is actually a computer itself, because it has got ports to connect peripherals like keyboard, mouse, and screen, and it has Linux operating system already installed in it. So if you want, you can program this microcontroller to function accordingly, according to what you desire for the project. But it itself is the smallest computer on board. It has quad-core processor with memory options of 2 GB, 4 GB, and 8 GB RAM. And the clock speed is also of either you can go for 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz. Now you see the clock speed difference. This one was just 20 megahertz, and the Raspberry Pi has 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, which is a difference of 1,000. 1 gigahertz is equal to 1,000 megahertz. So it is quite a lot of difference. So these speeds are actually, you will see these speeds in processors which are produced by Intel for our computers, the Intel Core i5, i3, i9, i7. So they are our processors are work on such clock speed itself, 3.3 gigahertz. So this microcontroller can work on operating temperature of 0 to 50 degrees Celsius. If it goes below 0, the components, the peripherals will stop functioning properly. And there are total 40 input IO pins, input output pins. These are the input output pins. Now, this is an expensive microcontroller, I would say, because if you go on purchasing a Raspberry Pi today, then I think it will cost around 4,000 to 5,000 rupees. But an Arduino is way too cost friendly, because Arduino Uno will cost around 500 to 1,000 rupees. But if you go for Arduino, like there are range of boards in Arduino. There is a nano version of Arduino. There is an Uno version which we saw, and there is a mega version. So the mega version is actually capable of functioning as functioning up like a Raspberry Pi. So it does cost around 2,000 to 3,000 rupees. It might be expensive too, the mega Arduino Mega. Now these two microcontrollers which we talked right now, the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi, they are not actually like you can use for your projects which are related with engineering. But if you want to implement electronic control systems in the automobile, in any automobiles, then you need to have specific type of microcontrollers. Now, why are they specific? Because there are some standards which have to be looked upon while choosing any microcontroller. So firstly, we have the SPC5. So SPC5 is actually a family of microcontrollers. There are variants of microcontrollers in the family of SPC5. So this is developed by ST Microcontrollers, and it complies with the automotive standards of AEC Q100. Now these standards define the like what we have the standards for our phone. Like let's say we have my phone is IP47 or 67 compliant, which means it is waterproof or water resistance. Similarly, microcontrollers have to be water resistance too, because there is humidity around us, and that humidity can affect the electricity which is running inside the board, and it can short circuit it, which we don't want, because if it does short circuit, then it is going to fail. And if any microcontroller fails while the vehicle is running, then the output will be disastrous, which we don't want. So that's why we need to have particular standards for our automotive microcontrollers. So the AEC Q100 standards are actually in 4 different parts. So this last 3 digits actually define the level of that standard. So there are 0, 1, 2, and 3 standards: AEC Q100, Q101, Q102, and 103. So each of the standards define the level of harshness that has been tested for that microcontroller. And these kind of microcontroller can work in harsh environment, like let's say this particular microcontroller can work at a temperature of minus 40 degrees Celsius to 165 degrees Celsius, which is hardly our environment temperature. But because of this operating temperature, we are assured that it is not going to be affected by the temperature of our environment. Secondly, they are highly compliant with static electricity. So we humans produce static electricity. If we rub our finger, or let's say it is winter season, we are wearing our sweaters. So as the sweater rub against our skin, we produce static electricity. And if this static electricity is being discharged on any electrical component or electronic component, it is going to fail it, because you are discharging voltage on that particular electronic component, and it is going to be short circuited, and that will fail that entire that will fail the entire microcontroller. So these kind of microcontrollers, the AEC Q100 standard complied microcontrollers are adhered to act against static electricity. Similarly, if you are into this PC building, then you would be aware that whenever you take out the motherboard for installing the microprocessor or RAM or hard disk on it, you place it on an anti-static mat, or you directly place it on a cardboard box in which the motherboard comes in. Why? Because cardboard is a non-conductor. It is an insulator, so it is not going to conduct any electricity, may that be static or regular electricity. So even if we have static electricity running in our skin, then it will be discharged to other like it will be insulated. So that's why we need to have the microcontrollers which are which can resist static electricity. Secondly, they can also resist dust, dirt, and the mud which comes, or the pollution which is present in the environment. So these kind of microcontrollers are made on that particular level. Arduino and Raspberry Pi cannot survive on that particular level, but you can use them for your mini projects or major projects, for your engineering projects, so that you get the idea of how you can code a standardized microcontroller. Now, these particular microcontroller have three number of cores, which works on 200 megahertz clock speed, because it doesn't. It all it needs to do is process some data, not to play games or anything. If your microcontroller like Raspberry Pi, you can play games on Raspberry Pi, so it has to process the data way too quickly. That's why its clock speed or the processor frequency was in gigahertz. But in automotive microcontrollers, all you need to do is process the data, and that's why the clock speed is just 200 megahertz. The operating temperature for this one is minus 40 degrees Celsius to 165 degrees Celsius. And these type of microcontrollers come pre-installed with CAN FD communication, Ethernet, LIN, and FlexRay. Now, don't worry about these words right now. These are some communication protocols which are already being implemented in our vehicles. We are going to talk about these communication protocols tomorrow, and I'll go I'll go thoroughly into CAN FD, but briefly into Ethernet, LIN, and FlexRay, because I've worked on CAN communication in my minor projects. So next we have is the RH850. So even this is a family of RH series microcontrollers by Renaissance Electronics. Even this is an EACQ 100 complied microcontroller. It works on the clock speed of 240 megahertz with operating temperature of minus 40 to 125 degrees Celsius, with communication protocols like CAN FD, Ethernet, LIN, FlexRay, and I2C or I2C. Now let's talk about some actuators, the muscles of the control systems. So firstly, we have servo motors. So just as the name says, these are motors. But unlike our regular AC or DC motors, which AC motors are actually used in our room fans, the ceiling fans, or pedal fans, or the wall fans. But unlike those motors, these motors actually are slow speed motors. So their speed can be controlled. They can be stopped at a particular angle. Our regular DC motors or AC motors cannot be stopped at a particular angle. So these they do have AC or DC motors for controlling the position of the output, but there is a steering. There is a power mechanism, gear train mechanism within it to control the speed of the motor, like control the output speed. So this is the simple cross-section image for a servo motor. Now this is the electric motor, which is a basic AC or DC motor, which has a worm wheel, screw around connected with the output shaft of the motor, which is connected with another gear. So these worm wheel and worm gear actually slows the speed by I don't remember the ratio, but I know that they can slow down the speed ratio by highest possible. So the output speed is way too low on this one, so the speed can be controlled, and it is transmitted to this output shaft, which is this crosshead screw, and we can connect other linkages on this screw on this head, and based on that we can control various systems. So bigger type of servo motors, which is this one. So the actual servo motors have different mechanism within it. They are controlled on electromagnetic positioning. Now the ones which we can use in our projects can be of this type, but the actual servo motors which have been used in just a sec, I'm getting a call. Hello.
Guys, you find any kind of a difficulty, then please let ask for one, because these are the new concept, and you will get lot of knowledge from this, even though you are working for your project work also.
Yes, sir. In my past, we had came across the importance of Arduino and the sensors, what sir has said. But
Yes.
only one small question or doubt. Sir, can we know the importance of actuators in electric vehicle?
Yeah. Sorry, I was the call was important. I had to take it. So yeah, what was the question? The importance of actuators.
In electric vehicles, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So uh, in electric vehicles, actuators are used in specifically in the steering mechanism. I was coming to that point itself. So in our current vehicles also, actuators are used in steering mechanism of our vehicles because the current power steering mechanism, the power steering system, actually, sorry. So current power steering system actually takes the input of driver on the steering, and it senses the position of the steering wheel, and based on that it allows the wheel to rotate accordingly, front wheels. So for where is the photo? Here we use mechanical system, the gear train, the rack and pinion system. But here, instead of this, to replace this shaft, because mechanical systems are heavy and there is lot of friction within them. So to delete the friction out of the system, we use electronic actuators. So here we have servo motors directly connected with this. So the effort required to provide to give the input by humans is reduced. I like if you have driven a power steering vehicle with like a vehicle with power steering, you don't need to require to give a lot of effort to rotate the steering wheel, right? You can just rotate it with just one finger. It's that effortless. So that to remove to make the human effort, to reduce the human effort, input effort, the actuators, the electronic control systems are used, and that's why we need actuators to react for the desired output. Now nextly, we also have actuators for suspension system. We have if we are using active, if the vehicle has active suspension system, then there are actuators within them. We will be I'm going to I'm going to like give how these different advanced systems are implemented in a vehicle and how they work, and where the electronics come in handy in any vehicle. I'm covering it in tomorrow's session. So in suspension system, we have actuators. In even if the flagship models of any company, let's say Mercedes, the S-Class variant of Mercedes-Benz has automatically lifted rear this boot door. So even in Skoda's Octavia, or let's say Superb, they have sensors beneath in the rear end of the vehicle, and when it senses your leg, like you just have to slightly like push your leg beneath it, and the sensor beneath it senses your leg, and it automatically opens the boot door. So that opening of boot door is actually done by the actuators. And there are various types of actuators. It is just not servo motors. Servo motors are specifically used in steering mechanism. There are other types of servo motors too, which are hydraulically operated, which are pneumatically operated, which was the next slide for this presentation. So you guys, being a mechanical engineer, you guys will be aware about pneumatic and hydraulic systems, because both are fluid mechanics system. So pneumatic works on compressed air, while hydraulic works on pressurized oil or fluid. Even air is a fluid, oil is fluid, so we can call this fluid actuators. So pneumatic actuators are quick response actuators. The impulse of that compressed air, as soon as you strike the piston inside the actuator, it just reacts accordingly. But let's say for hydraulic actuators, which the great example is our construction vehicle, which is, let's say, JCB, which is the actual term for it is backhoe loader. So in that, the arms are controlled by pneumatic hydraulic fluid pressure. So the arms are the bones of that, and let's say the rear, where's my mouse? Yeah. So this is the cabin of our JCB, and there is a rear arm behind it. So this arm is the scoop. So this entire arm is actuated with hydraulic pressure. There are various hydraulic actuators, piston cylinder assembly connected across the entire arm, that will control the angle of that arm in our plane, in horizontal plane, and then it will also make it move up and down. It will also make this arm to move forward and back, like in particular angle, and it can rotate this entire system in clockwise or anti-clockwise direction, and it also controls the rotation of this bucket. So hydraulic actuators work according to this. So can pneumatic actuators, but the pneumatic actuators, like hydraulic actuators, are gradual. They act gradually, but pneumatic actuators act with sudden speed, in an instantaneously. But both the function of both the pneumatic and hydraulic actuators is almost same. Only the construction difference is there, the design difference is there. Now, here comes the final part of today's session, which is Tinkercad. Now, if you want to, if you're planning to design or develop any control system for your project or minor project, you can't just directly go ahead and purchase sensors, microcontrollers, and actuators and just assemble them and just directly load your code in them and go ahead and run it. You need to simulate those circuits firstly. So for simulation, we have this free software which is developed by Autodesk, and it is a browser-based software, so you don't even need to download it. It can be run on any PC. It doesn't require a high-end workstation or any of such sort. So you can just open your laptop or your, I guess it works on tablets as well. But you can just go ahead and open your laptop's browser, just search tinkercad.com, and you can easily gather the components, the sensors, the controllers, and the actuators in them, and you can simulate the system before actually making a hardware. I'm going to show you two types of system today. One is how to control a servo motor, and how to control the speed of a DC motor. So I'm just gonna open this. So yeah, as I was saying, this is the first screen of the Tinkercad. This is a browser-based software. So yeah, this is the servo motor design that I've made. So on the right side, you can get all the components. They provide resistors, LED, push buttons, potentiometer, capacitors, slide switch, batteries, breadboard, then microbit and Arduino Uno R3, vibration motor, DC motor, servo motor, transistors, RGB LEDs, diodes, ultrasonic sensors, temperature sensor, piezoelectric sensor, and multimeter as well. So you can connect these, you can connect the microcontroller with the sensor and the actuator, and you can also program this microcontroller in this. So in the fun fact about Tinkercad is you can either program it with text, the way I have done over here, or you can program it with blocks. Blocks is like puzzles, like we arrange blocks in a certain way so that it perform the task in certain conditions. But blocks is the most like it is. I feel it is tedious task, so I just like to write the code for the Arduino. So to explain this code, like if you are aware about C language, Arduino is a program over C language. So C language has, like in this particular Arduino C language, we have three parts: the include part, the void setup, and the void loop part. So in include, we call all the required libraries in the microcontroller. Like for example, Arduino already has a servo library, so that's why we include the servo library in this, which is #include angular bracket servo.h, and we provide the input port, which is the port value over here. So input port, this green wire shows the input port, which is A0, and we with this we tell the microcontroller to sends the data of this particular port, and this is and the data which will be coming is in the form of integer, which is int for Arduino. Then in the void setup, we give it the desired this key. In void setup, we tell the microcontroller that at this particular pin I have so and so servo motor attached. So on 9 number of pin, I've attached the servo motor, and this 10,000, 1,000 and 2,000 are the minimum pulse width and the maximum pulse width of the output signal. And in the void loop, we tell the microcontroller to read the analog data of A0, then map it to a certain values, mapping it like it is scaling the values. Like if we are designing anything, if we are doing the engineering drawing, then we write the scale of that particular sheet at the bottom right corner of the sheet, right? So the same thing we do over here. We scale down the voltage values into particular values so that it is easily understandable for the microcontroller and to us too. And thus lastly we ask them to write that particular pot value data to the servo motor actuation. So to simulate this, let's start the simulation. Now it is starting. So I had it on 0, so it is now on 0 position. Now as soon as I rotate the potentiometer, the servo motor arm rotates. So I have programmed this for a 90-degree angle. So it will just rotate till for 0 to 90 degrees itself. Now you can program this for more angles, like 180-degree angles as well. If the servo motor in this one allows you to go till 180 degrees, you can make it to rotate till 180 degrees. Now let's say if this is the throttle by wire, or let's say this is the steering system of our vehicle. So this arm is connected with two front wheels, and this is the center point of our vehicle. When we are holding the steering wheel at the very center, so the wheels are straight, so it is moving forward. Now we take a left turn, so it lets the wheel to turn in the left direction. If you take the right turn, it lets the wheel to turn in the right direction. So this is how electronically operated power steering works. Now current generation of power steering is actually electro-hydraulically controlled. So this kind of servo motors are actually controlling the valves of the hydraulic motors, and that's how it valves of the hydraulic actuators, and that's how it controls the direction of the wheels with the help of electro-hydraulic control systems. Now this was a simple example of how to control servo motor. Let's see how to control a DC motor. Now the reason for simulating this is it will give a better idea how electric vehicles work. So even in this, I have written a code for DC motor, just like the previous one. Now DC motor, there is no library for DC motor. That's why that's why there is no code of #include motor.h or anything as such. But controlling DC motor is easier than controlling a servo motor. So
sir, sorry for interruption. How to write a code? Can we have any training? Or
So firstly, I would like, to be honest, the only experience of coding for me was back in 10th standard, and that too I know I could only code to make mathematical equations. I wrote a code for giving two integers, and I would perform a mathematical operation on it, like addition or subtraction. So that was the only idea of coding for me.
Okay.
And from that, I learned how I had that basic idea of how codes were working in C language. So with this, to program any microcontroller, I was just watching videos on YouTube and how they function. So if you these codes are the code for servo motor and DC motor are easily available on internet.
Actually, if you want to learn more in depth about the C language, then there is a platform on Coursera. So there is a tremendous course available on Coursera. They have the in-depth knowledge of C language as well as Python and Java language.
Yeah, actually that is a better answer, because this is my way of doing. I didn't want to go deep into this. I wanted to just write codes for my particular project. So I didn't do any course for that. I just learned how this particular system worked. Then I implemented my CAN communication within it, and that's how I made my project. But if you want to go deep and how proper codes work, there are actually rules for writing codes. There are layers of code, and we have to maintain that sort of what we call discipline while writing a code. So yeah, you can go on Coursera. Then there is Skilllink and other platforms. Internshala also might have some courses for learning C language, Python, Java, C++. So we would suggest you do the courses.
Yeah, sir, thanks for that. What happened? C language is almost we know. Even I also know, but how to use the C language for Arduino coding. So right now it is available on net. So with having that kind of reference, we can start building up our own skill. For particular this kind of programming, we can code it in this way. So that we have to build up. That part
Yes.
I would like to know.
Yeah,
Thanks for
so
that. I understood that.
yeah, so yeah, the way you described it, I actually learned the code for controlling servo motor and DC motor in the same manner. Actually, like, yeah, this code I learned from Google itself, from Google and YouTube, and I played around with this code a little, and that's how I learned what each value were meant. And usually, when this code, when you get when these codes you get available with this code, they have this comments written on the right hand side of them. So these comments explain what that particular line of code means.
Yes.
So that's how you can understand what that particular code means, and you can tweak your values for your particular project or your particular experiment. And that's a simple way of learning, the less expensive way of learning, the what we say, I learned it by self, that way of learning.
Okay.
So
actually, Thinkercad is the best platform to learn
Yeah.
the basic virtual projects. We learned this platform on our post graduation, and we have performed many experiments on this.
yeah, these were the two basic experiments, the servo motor and DC motor controlling. We then we did an experiment on sensing the temperature, and based on the temperature we switched on number of LEDs, the RGB LEDs accordingly, and based on the temperature we also control the DC motor. So
Yes,
those were some intermediate level of control system. These are some basic level of electronic control system which I would suggest the students to try and do, and make actual hardware projects on this, based on this. So if I would like, let's continue back now. So to control a DC motor, so DC motor cannot like function on one particular voltage. To control the speed, we actually need to regulate the voltage, and even in this we have to make it to control the speed of any motor, we need to control the pulse width of the motor. Let me just explain with a slide. So DC motors also function on certain pulses. It actually triggers the magnetism inside the motor. If you have learned about electric motors, then there is a rotor coil, there is a stator coil. So we need to trigger the stator coil in certain particular manner so that the rotor coil gets charged up or gets attracted to that magnetic field, and does it rotate. So to control the speed of that rotation, we actually manipulate this pulse width. This is the pulse width. In short, we call it PWM, pulse width modulation. So to control the speed, we actually manipulate this with this pulse width. So if you want the speed to be smaller, the pulse will be width of the pulse will be short, something like this. But if you want the speed of the motor to be faster, the pulse width of that particular pulse will be larger. So to control this pulse width, I had to connect a transistor and a capacitor. So transistor is actually electronic switches, which is triggered by gate pulses. Gate pulses are the digital pulses, which is provided by the Arduino in this case. So to see how this works, let me just simulate this. So yeah, so here's a potentiometer over here, and it is currently on the 0 position. So as soon as I rotate it, the DC motor will start rotating at a particular speed, and if I increase it, it will increase the speed. In this case, it was not increasing because there was some issue with my connections and my code. Like both were working hand in hand to not get this motor to work properly. But I cleared it out, and in my hardware, I was able to control the speed of my motor. So yeah, here we can see like how we can decrease it and increase it with the potentiometer. So this simulates an easy control system for our electric vehicles, that this potentiometer is defining the throttle input which is provided by the driver, and the DC motor is actually showcasing the electric motors which are being used in electric vehicles. But to be honest, electric vehicles don't have DC motors. They have what we call PMSM motors or BLDC motors. Those are higher end motors, but they function on the same principle of DC motor. So if you want to make a, let's say, small scale car, so with the steering mechanism and a powertrain mechanism, then you can program the microcontroller for a single microcontroller for controlling the servo motor and DC motor together. So instead of the way I have done in two separate parts over here, you can just arrange the code in such a way that only one microcontroller will control both the servo motor and DC motor with different analog pins. So here I have given the DC motor analog pin to A0. You can give the analog pin for servo motor in A1, and here the pulse width that I'm providing for DC motor is on pin 12. You can program the Arduino for pin 9 to control the servo motor output. So one particular Arduino can control various number of system around it. You can control servo motor, DC motor, temperature, and Hall effect sensors all together on one board. And you can make a small scale car around this. This will power the rear wheels, and the front wheels will be steered by the servo motor. I actually did it for my project, but it was a little advanced, which had CAN communication protocol running over it. So we are going to talk about CAN communication, LIN communication, MOST, then FlexRay and Ethernet, and all of this type and all other type of communication protocols in tomorrow's session. Simultaneously, we will look into advanced technologies like how does ABS work, how does EBD and ESC works, how does regenerative braking works, how active or semi-active suspension, adaptive cruise control, heel hold, TPNS, and various such new advanced technology which are implemented in our vehicles and are going to be implemented in our electric vehicles. We will look into it tomorrow. Simultaneously, we will look into how vehicle can communicate with other vehicles and how vehicle will communicate with infrastructure, which is a basic concept for autonomous vehicles and driverless vehicles for future. So let me just stop the simulation. This was it for today's session. Now we didn't get any queries in between. Well, like we had queries from but students didn't ask any queries. So feel free to ask the queries now. Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Purvang, you are audible.
Yeah, the silence was killing me.
Yes, guys, please let answer and whatever doubts you are having. Also, do subscribe the channel of Purvang Mantri. You can visit and you can find a lot of videos on regarding to automobile components and technology.
Thank you, sir. I request now students, if you are having any doubt, right now you can clarify.
So students, if you don't have any doubts at this particular moment, but if any doubts arise in future, then you can feel free to contact me over LinkedIn or my Gmail. Yes. This is my LinkedIn ID. You can just search Purvang Mantri on LinkedIn and my profile will come up. You can directly message me over there, okay. Or else you can drop an email on my email address, which is just purvangmantri@gmail.com.
Yes.
Other than that, if you want to learn how, like the way I described about my project, I have got a series on YouTube working on project part 1 and part 2. Part 1 was about my bachelor's project. Part 2 was my PGD project. So I have got those playlists on my YouTube channel. You can go ahead and watch it. How I developed the scale model car, which was functioning over CAN bus protocol, and how I controlled servo motor and DC motor over CAN bus protocol. And you can check that out. And also I have got other other videos related with automobile engineering and vehicle dynamics, and I also do a little bike review and stuff. So you can go ahead and check it out. If you like my videos, then feel free to subscribe. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. Definitely we will subscribe. No problem.
Actually, initially, I can understand you guys are from mechanical background. You will feel these components and this technology to be hard to grasp. But when initially you understand the concept and the experimenting on that particular part, then it is actually more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And secondly, the way industries are moving forward now, like me and Harshal have experienced this, that various manufacturing industry and the electric vehicle industries are actually looking for engineers who are who have at least basic knowledge of electronics.
Yes.
Because everything is going towards electronics and electronic control systems, that just a mechanical engineering student is not like, they don't think it is required for them. They want a technocrated engineer who, like, even being a mechanical engineer, you should know how electronics work, and you should have particular projects which are electronically based but are mechanical projects.
Okay.
Just an example, you can consider that there is a conventional vehicle and there is an electric vehicle. So in conventional vehicle, there are almost 400 parts, and in nowadays electric vehicles, there are only included 40 parts. Those are
Yeah.
major, and those are actually functioning the electric vehicle. So huge difference is there.
Yeah, and in tomorrow's session you will get a great idea, like good idea of what kind of projects you can do, and like how you can change current conventional vehicles. Like, just say the throttle of your bike, you can change it and make it electronically operated. We will look into it tomorrow further, and that's how you can, like, learn electronics while being a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
So I hope today's session was fun and it was knowledgeable.
Yes. One thing I would like to point out, the beauty of the today's session is the Tinkercad. When I was working with Mbaha and Ibaha, we were looking for such a simulation software which gave us the movement of the vehicle and many things. What happened? Because figure of 8 and etc. These are few tests from
Yeah.
the Mbaha and Ibaha competition.
Yeah.
So at that time, we were looking for all kinds of such a simulation software. Tinkercad was one of that, but we had not given much focus on it because as it is related to electronics. But now today, you make it so simple for us that Tinkercad, we are just having a phobia that array, it may be a very difficult, we cannot play with it, we cannot handle. But from today, we'll never have such kind of phobia. We will definitely use it, Tinkercad, and for our electronic components control and all that features for that simulation. That is the beauty for today's sessions. And
Yes, sir. Also, if you go to the Tinkercad gallery, so you can find in the circuit gallery, you can find the more and more experimental projects, those who are performed all over the world, and you can just try and also you can implement in your actual projects also.
yes, definitely, sir. I'm basically writing every note. आता काय करायचं काय नाही हा महत्त्वाचा प्रोजेक्ट कसा आपण वापरू शकतो. So everything such things I'm writing in notes on my side.
Right, good. Yeah.
Now again, I request students, if you have any doubt, either you can clarify right now or later on you can contact with respected Harshal sir or with Purvang sir also. They definitely for tomorrow we will again meet at the same time with the same link. And again, I request Harshal sir and Purvang sir to join the tomorrow session. And on behalf of mechanical department and EVD team, I again thankful to both of them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Today's session
Okay,
was
thank you,
actually
sir.
fun.
If there is no kind of any doubt is there, so we will wind up today's session and we will meet tomorrow same time at 10 a.m.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll sign off now. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.